but certainly the one later, Rakestraw opinion, doesn't mean much, I think, is Diocletian. He was the one who most fervently and for a long period of time had the whole empire involved in persecuting Christians. It was not just in spots and areas. It was law, it was empire-wide, and he had the staff to make sure it happened. And that was very, very soon before Constantine came along. Another clue. 7 heads are said to represent 7 hills. And I know that could be Cincinnati, Jack. But since Cincinnati probably wasn't in the Roman Empire, let's see. So you look at all of this that the Bible tells us about this first beast. I mean, I respect your opinion, but it's wrong. 7 hills. You know, kings, of course, everything had a king back then. You look at this, and we'll look at this in a minute. Why in the world did Rome get so twisted off about these Christians? To me, that's the real question. Because Romans, we know for many, many centuries, they were really good about incorporating lands that they conquered, religions and traditions. They weren't, you know, they didn't have just one way of doing things. They were happy to take in Greek gods and give them Latin names, and, you know, as they went around the empire. What was it about these stinking Christians that got them so upset? I mean, of all the problems they had to deal with in this massive empire, the civil wars they had to deal with, the knot-headed Jews in Jerusalem that was always a burr in their blanket. Of all the problems they had, why did they fixate on these Christians?
I'm remembering back in Daniel 2, you know, all of these empires, Babylon, Persia, Greece, they promoted the worshiping of their emperor. Okay, that I think that was consistent through all of those empires. And so when you get to the Roman Empire, who wanted the people to worship their emperor, the Christians wouldn't do it. Yeah. and they wouldn't do it so much that they gave their lives instead of doing it. They couldn't turn.
Yeah. Interesting. But you know, I argue the other side of it. Yeah, everything you said was true, but they weren't affecting the government that much. They weren't assassinating people. They weren't killing people. In fact, they seemed to be very humble. They were out gathering up orphan children, giving them a life. They helped each other when each other had needs and food, and you know, they served. They never tried to start an insurrection. You never had a group of Christians in this era screaming, "Bring down the emperor."
Yeah, I think Ron's onto something though. When you look at history, all totalitarian governments resist any other power but their own. And when they saw that there was another, let's call him the emperor, there was another power, there was another kingdom, they could not handle that. They do not want anything but themselves. And it's the same, it's been the same ever since. Rome was it, man. There's nothing greater than that. You start addressing that problem, you're addressing the real what did Satan say to Jesus? Fall down and worship me, I'll give you everything. That's exactly who they are.
Doesn't sound like a whole lot to ask. I mean, fall down and worship, it's transient. But Romans had all these other gods. The emperor wasn't the only one. He was just one that they asked. Some of them had rows of gods on their fire mantle. You know, the God of bread, the God of my dog, the God of my cat, the God of,
Well, that was it, Jesus was the only one, they said. He's the only one. All these others, forget it. Just throw them out.
so the first
Anyway.
beast is Rome. The first beast is like the beast in Daniel 7. We really don't know for certain that it's Rome, but most people agree it probably is. The beast with 10 horns in Daniel 7 is commonly thought to represent the empire. The first beast in Revelation is for sure Rome, no doubt about it. So, this question, why does Rome get messed up about the church so much? I think it's a little more complicated than, yeah, they just wouldn't do what they said. I think there was something far more satanic and a power outside of this world, or not of this world, going on in all of this. Rome is, we have enough leftover history. As bad as we criticize Rome today, these son of guns were smart. They would come in, they'd take over these lands. They would always try to woo, because they knew how much it cost to have a standing army. They knew how much it cost to have your foot on somebody's neck and hold them down. That's not what they wanted to do. They just wanted you to do what they said. It's kind of like being an only child. I only asked one thing out of life, and that's to have my own way. And that's what the Romans wanted. They just, you know, if you were willing to comply, you know, they had a number of kingdoms. They had these little puppet servants over, and it's, oh yeah, you're independent. Kind of like Russia and some of the places today, and of the past 50 years. And you know, Romans were good. They were smart. They were extremely good at finance. They were extremely good at government administration. Were really wise. Later on, I'm going to make a comment about why that's important. So, but what did Satan need? He needed to destroy God's plan for man's salvation, because Satan's desire was standing there accusing John Rakestraw of my sins before God and knowing fully well he's right. No doubt about it. John did it. We got 7 recording phone cameras. There's no doubt that John is lost to sin. The second beast comes up with the first beast. Now we're moving on to the second beast. He comes up with the first beast in chapter 13, and he goes down with the third beast. Some of the alternate teaching of this letter will separate that, but the letter itself clearly lets us know that these two beasts came up together and they both went down together. So the second beast cannot represent something that hasn't existed. It was with the first beast, which is wrong. The second beast speaks like a devil. So obviously he serves Satan, or he speaks like a dragon. He works under the authority of the first beast. Basically he's there to do his bidding, and his sole function was to set up statues of the heads of the first beast and require people to worship them. Who was doing these things at this time and for the next couple of hundred years? Those who worshiped the emperor got a mark that showed the head, and that way they could, you know, it's like, do you have your social security number? Yes. Do you have your Medicare card? Yes. I mean, I'm not saying those things are associated with some evil, but it's hard to function through life today without some type of certification. And this was a certification that you did what the government asked you to do, and that is worship the emperor. And if you didn't have your little card, so to speak, actually is a little domino shaped thing in most of the ones they find. They found thousands of these things in excavation. You know, you weren't able to trade and buy and sell and move freely across the country, and sometimes if you didn't have them, you were killed. The first century Christians to this letter would address would have, I think, recognized the second beast immediately, as would the Christians of the second and third centuries. It was the cult of emperor worship. Now, I had a list, and I come back to what I said earlier. I could see where someone might have a view that it wasn't this, it was something more specific, or an individual more specific. I wouldn't argue with that at all. But the point is, this is the organization, this is the group of men and women who carried out the emperor's bidding. And if you really look at what was written, you know, they actually it wasn't just the emperor coming up and saying, Mark, I want you to get a bunch of people together and we're going to worship me. No, it was Mark almost sometimes coming up to me and said, no, John, you demand, you're special. You're not like anybody else. These people should worship you. And I go, yeah, I am pretty special. My mother told me that. You know, I am. So, you know, it's not just this one evil being. It's this whole idea of, and what were these people after? Why would they go along with this promoting the emperor?
They're trying to achieve peace. So one of the statements it says that the lamb's going to have horns, but one of them's going to have horns like a lamb. So there's an element of peacefulness to it. They're trying to achieve peace and keep quells down. If you give people a thing to focus their attention on, they're not warring with each other.
I like
You
that.
know?
I think for a lot of them individually, it was power and money. You know, if Mark could become my buddy, and I'm throwing a few $100 billion, as they use in terms today, to help Mark finance his program, Mark's probably living pretty good. And besides that, Mark's my biggest promoter. To let the world